The ACC would like to keep every team locked into the conference until 2036, but Florida State and Clemson, here's why they might be able to get out by or before 2027.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Shout out to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. He's Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. So, Kenton, I know that Florida State and Clemson fans, they certainly want to get out of the conference even sooner than this, but there may be possibly a smoking gun here. We'll talk about it. The 2027 might be the year.
Yeah, for sure. You know, you're looking at this thing and you're saying to yourself, man, what twists and turns are we in for? And now there's allegedly something in the fine print, something that's not redacted, because if you look at the actual documents that were put out to the public, I'll tell you what, it's like a DMX song over the radio. There's just like one word, redacted, 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 and then another word, and then more redaction. So, you know, you just don't have the beats and the barks to vibe off of like you do with the DMX song on the radio. So it's much tougher of a read to get through. But in all seriousness, I'm ready to get into what this could possibly mean for Clemson and FSU in 2027.
So here is, I'm going to pull up an X post and we'll read it for those listening to the audio version. You'll see it on your screen as well if you're watching the video version. This is from Doug Rohan. He's an attorney, Rohan Law. He's not directly involved in the Florida State and Clemson cases, but he's been monitoring them very closely and providing commentary throughout on social media. So we have these heavily redacted versions of the ACC ESPN television agreement that are out there. And, you know, people are pulling some nuggets from the unredacted part. Now, I want to note, since we don't know what's in the redacted part, you see all those black marks there on the screen, the stuff we're not allowed to read. I don't know if any of that stuff may invalidate what we read in the text, but here's the breakdown from Rohan Law. The text of the readable agreements show and confirm that these agreements were designed to run until 2027. And by the way, this is the TV agreement, not the grant of rights. The TV agreement is part of that. He says, while there has been a lot of talk about an extension in the term of the agreement by letter, only one paragraph is amended. These contracts have multiple paragraphs that reference the various payout dates through a certain period. Any extension that was designed to extend the entire contract would have to restate all of these contract terms, not just the one paragraph. This lends credibility to the view that the current ESPN agreement with the ACC expires in 2027. A completely new multimedia agreement approved by the members according to the bylaws would be required to extend the contract beyond 2027. Unless there's something else of consequence in the redacted portions, maybe there are. This tells me, Doug writes, that the current agreement and therefore the grant of rights expires in 2027. According to 1.6.2 of the ACC Constitution, if 2/3 of the members vote to extend the material media rights agreement, that could bind Florida State and Clemson to the 2036 terms of the grant of rights. This is a reminder that for Florida State and Clemson to win, they need to get a victory on just one of their arguments. For the ACC to win, they need to beat FSU and Clemson at every single argument. So, all right, Kenton, I think my big takeaway here is people are wondering if the current form of this TV agreement, as had been rumored, if that expires in 2027, to extend that to 2036, would that require a new grant of rights, meaning every member has to agree to it and vote on it? I'm sure the ACC would say no, it does not require that. Does it require a 2/3 vote? The ACC would probably have that 2/3 vote, even if Clemson and Florida State vote no on that. Or some people wonder if it's going to require a vote at all, or if Jim Phillips is just going to say, boom, let's go. Or what about the ESPN side of it? Could ESPN come out of this before 2027 and say, you know what, we're going to wash our hands of the ACC. We're not going to continue till 2036. So these are all the variables that may or may not play in Florida State and Clemson's favor.
So let's look at those variables for just a second here, okay? The ESPN angle. ESPN is making out like bandits. Every report on the amount that ESPN is bringing in relative to the money they are paying out says they got a one-up on the ACC. Where I come from, some would say they have the drop on the ACC, okay? They're having their way more or less with what they want to do in terms of the payout versus what they're receiving in. So ESPN abandoning the ACC, it doesn't pass the smell test. And now let's look at that 2/3 vote thing for a second. Where do they think all of these votes to leave are coming from? Right now, we're looking at how many teams, Donno? 17? Is that the total member number with everybody?
Well, actually, you know what? I think for the grant of rights, I think Notre Dame, even though they're not in football, I think that they're part of that. So it's technically 18.
18, meaning you need 6 teams to vote against it. Even if I were to fully grant you Clemson, Florida State, Miami, UNC, who else?
No,
Even
you would need 12 teams to vote against it. You would need 2/3.
Oh, you would need 2/3 to vote against it. I thought you needed 2/3 to vote for it. If you need 2/3 to vote against it, this is much worse than what I had originally thought. I thought it was 2/3 had to vote.
You might be right, by the way. I think if 2/3 of the I think you might be right. If 2/3 of the members vote to extend the material media rights agreement, that could so you're right. 2/3. You were right. I was wrong.
Either way you cut or slice it, it doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. The numbers are right there. There are so many different and I guess the argument that Rohan Law is making here is, well, if they have to renew it, how do you charge somebody to get out of something that's not officially established, that the charter isn't officially there for yet? Except, see, it is. Like the fact that we're discussing this contract, which goes to 3036, says that the charter is there. But far be it for me to tell a lawyer, hey, I know the law better than you. Rohan Law's been at this for 20 years. I'm not saying that he has his garnet and gold glasses on. I'm not saying that the glasses that he's wearing have a little spear design on the side of them.
Yeah, I think he did get his law degree from Florida State. I know he might have been undergrad, but I think he did go there at some point. So a little bias doesn't mean he's wrong, though.
I was just about to say, but there are plenty of times where I picked NC State to win a game, nobody else had them winning, and I wasn't wrong about it. You know what I mean? So I get what Rohan Law is saying here. And I don't want to say I know the law better than a lawyer. So I'm not going to say that. But what I will say is I think that it's very interesting. And I'd love to see how it plays out in terms of the ACC has to win at every point, and Clemson and Florida State have to win at just any argument. I struggle with the idea that is fully feasible, or that's a realm of reality that we're living in. I'm struggling to see that realm. But, as y'all know, on this show, we're not afraid to invite anybody on. We're not afraid. So if Rohan Law wants to come on, I saw CNN and all that in there. This is your formal invite, brother. If y'all want Florida State fans, y'all want to tag them on our show? Sure. Yeah, we'll extend the invite. We want you on. Just like we're having a guy from Cal on who said that there was nothing but Arizonas and Arizona States here. We want to have these conversations because I'm very interested in breaking this down, not only to break down the legalese, but as what is his name? As Albert Einstein once said, if you truly understand a concept, you can explain it to a 5-year-old. And so I would love to see the concepts here that go into, hey, this is something that, ACC has to dominate. Florida State and Clemson just need to come up with one win, and how that works out in terms of a full win for either of those schools or both.
No matter how that plays out, I think this is giving us a preview of how future court arguments are going to play out, because to me, that 2027 look-in clause, or the opportunity to redo or abolish that TV deal, that to me is going to be the focal point on both the Clemson fronts. And I think Clemson were the ones to bring this to the forefront even before Florida State did. But I think that's going to be the focal point of both of these lawsuits now, that what happens on 2027, and does that mean the grant of rights in its current form is no longer valid? And can these schools get out for free? And guess what, Kenton? If they rule that there's no longer a grant of rights after 2027, if that's what the court comes up with, that becomes an existential crisis for the ACC.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think any argument can be made that if that is the ruling, and I've talked a lot about, hey, what happens if Florida State and Clemson get absolutely mopped in court? What happens if the ACC gets mopped in court? And that is the case, like you said. But here's the thing. I still don't think that we're in that area because the Pac-12 was the Pac-12 first. The Pac-12 didn't have a predecessor of a Power 5 conference that was completely disbanded, that basically had their teams go to other conferences based on what is your status and what is your rank. All of the top tier, the eyeball getters from the Pac-12, they got to go to the conference they wanted to go to, right? And then even the second tier teams, quote unquote, second tier, got to go to conferences that they wanted to. And the problem is, because the ACC is falling in line behind that, where are these teams going to go? Who wants these teams? And even beyond that, who would vote to opt out of the grant of rights without somewhere better to go?
Right. Yeah, it would not be smart. I mean, because I'm sure the Big 12 would be more than happy to take a bunch of these teams, but not all of them. They're not taking everybody.
They're not taking everybody. And also, what is the Big 12's cut? We are dealing a lot with perception. We're dealing a lot with perception. The fans can deal with perception. Media people can deal with perception, because your check and my check don't change based on perception or reality. A fan's fandom, your belief in the Canes, your belief in the Nose, your belief in the Tigers, your belief in the Pack, your belief in the Heels, your belief in the Orange, it does not change based on whether or not there is actually more money to be made in the ACC than the Big 12. That doesn't change. You know what does change? That AD's money. His or her, their money changes. You know what does change? The money that goes into your stadium or not, because you've made a fiscally deleterious decision. So I'm very interested to see, even if things do play out that these teams have a get out of jail free card to go to another conference, who actually pulls the trigger to say, I know that there are greener pastures out there for me, as opposed to saying, you know what, things may not be perfect, but it better the devil you know than to go out there and end up an independent trying to fight and scrap for a local TV deal.
I got another scenario for you when we come back, which could be a big win for a bunch of teams that are currently in the ACC, but a big loss for a handful of them. Plus, on this episode, it has been revealed, guys, first team preseason all ACC. Did we, the media, get it right? Because Kenton and I both voted on this. First team all ACC, any omissions, anybody who doesn't belong, who did get in there. And I'll take a preseason victory lap for my guy Cam Ward. I know it's proven on the field, and so I kind of laugh at the whole preseason player of the year thing, but I mean, big honor from my dude. We'll keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. And you know we're only getting started with eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, that's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, check out our other shows. Kenton does an awesome job. Locked On Wolfpack. I host Locked On Canes every single day, wherever you get your podcasts, free and available free on YouTube as well, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Kenton, another scenario that's been thrown out there by some tinfoil hat wearing individuals, that if let's
I
say
know
the
exactly
court.
where you're going with this. I know.
I don't
This
know
is
if you do. We'll
nasty
see. You
business.
tell me. You tell me if you do know
See.
where I'm going with it.
Let's see.
Okay, we'll see. So if the courts, plural, because there's multiple courts involved, basically say the grant of rights, it's finished in 2027. Like there's no, you have to create a new grant of rights after 2027. Then the scenario could be, because this has been talked about before, that let's say like the top 8, top 10 money makers in the ACC say, let's just cut out the rest of these guys that bring it. Is that where you thought I was going?
I knew it.
You
Yeah,
knew?
that's what I knew it. Yeah, because
You knew,
we've
or
talked.
we say, where we say sayonara to Wake Forest, Boston College. It was nice knowing you, and we whoever we have to cut out to make this thing more profitable, and then we go to ESPN, we renegotiate a deal where we all get more money, and everybody except the schools that get kicked to the curb win.
That is something that I've heard floated around a lot, and it is something that I hate to say it, I really do. In this new landscape of college athletics, it is more likely than ever to be a possibility. Because before, there was something, and don't get me wrong, and don't give me the line and saying, oh, this thing was never based on money. It was always based on friendship and regionalism and da-da-da-da. I'm not going to tell you that lie. But in this current environment that we are in terms of college sports, specifically college football, there is such a move, there is such a press to squeeze out every dollar that I would not be surprised to see certain teams get squeezed out in that same vein of, hey, listen, we like you. We think you're cool. We think you're all right. But with all due respect, business decisions had to be made. It was either cut you or take $1 billion from Red Herring Capital. Those were our options. I'm sorry. We love the Demon Deacons as much as anybody. We love M&T Bank Stadium. I believe that's the name of their stadium. I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna fact check that one. Maybe.
I'm sorry. We love going up to Chestnut Hill, and I know some people are gonna say, "Oh, you keep taking shots at those two," but there are other schools included in this group. I know that those schools are gonna say, "Oh, we know it's tough," and there'll probably be a series of lawsuits about, well, the grant of rights didn't say that due to all that type of stuff. Back in court and all that, but this is more likely a possibility than ever. The tinfoil hatters may just get their wish here because, again, folks are chasing that dollar like we've never seen. And as the Honorable RZA of Wu-Tang Clan once said, cash rules everything around me. Cream, get the money. Dollar bills, y'all. And that seems to be where we're headed. And if that is where we're headed, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see some of these teams get purged out, unfortunately.
Yeah. So moving on, hundreds of media members last week had the opportunity to vote on several things, right? We talked about the ACC order 1 to 17, how the teams are going to finish. We have individual preseason honors being handed out. And so hundreds of media members got to vote on this, and they collectively decided Cam Ward, Miami Hurricanes transfer starting quarterback, is the preseason player of the year. Now, obviously, I cover Miami. I've had a chance to get to know Ward a little bit since January, since he arrived. At the same time, like I kind of scoff at like preseason player of the year. Like, why do we even give that out, right? And if I were to present that honor to Cam Ward, he would probably say, this doesn't really mean anything to me because I need to go out there on the field and prove it. At the same time, I guess it's nice to get that recognition, right? And were you expecting Ward to take home this preseason ACC Player of the Year honor?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is more so a quarterback award. I believe the last running back we had when it was Travis Etienne. And even then, he might not have won it. It might have been Trevor Lawrence twice. It might have been Trevor Lawrence twice.
I can't remember, but it might have been.
The way that I see this thing, I mean, a preseason Player of the Year is de facto a antithetical situation, right? It goes against itself in a weird way, like jumbo shrimp, or oxymoronic should be the word, and not antithetical. Yes. Oxymoronic, because it's preseason Player of the Year. The year has not happened yet, and yet we have a Player of the Year. It's very much so one of those things where, and then I know a lot of media members get on me about this. It's one of those 24-hour news cycle things. It's one of those things that's like, We need something to fill this content void because,
Mhm.
you know, that's just kind of what this is. But I will say this, and I know that you're the positive Patty on this show, and it's your Canes. So you don't want me to rain on your parade, but I got to. The downside of this, it adds to the pressure cooker for Mario.
Oh, yeah.
It adds to it. Because now people are going to say, you couldn't get it done with a preseason player of the year if he doesn't make it happen. You did all these transfers. You got all these guys, and you still couldn't get it done. Hits a little different than you had the preseason player of the year. You had multiple guys who made all ACC teams, and yet we still saw 7 wins, 8 wins as the result. My brother in Christ, go coach somebody's offensive line. You can't do this no more.
Well, and to what you're saying, not only did Miami have multiple first-team All-ACC preseason, they had the most in the conference, 5. Like, they led the conference, which is interesting because, you know, the media is very high, like, on Miami individual players, but they still pick them third in the conference. So it's people want to see them actually prove it on the field. They want to see Mario Cristobal prove it this year, and we'll talk about the first-team All-Conference shortly. But as far as Cam Ward, I know I kind of, like, you know, downplayed the preseason player of the year thing for obvious reasons, but at the same time, I am happy for him and I'm happy for Miami, despite the pressure cooker aspect of it, which is a good angle. It's also nice to have your players recognized because Ward, you know, he worked very hard for the last couple years at Washington State and the first 2 years of his career at Incarnate Word. I mean, this is a guy, for reasons I don't quite understand, was barely recruited out of high school, had to work his way up from FCS to FBS and really put up gigantic numbers the last couple seasons. He seems like someone who's all about working hard. He's not a diva. He's all about football. So I'm very happy for Ward. And yet we'll talk about that first team All ACC when we come back. Anybody that wasn't on there that should have been, anybody who's on there that, what's he doing there? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Guys, we've been winning money all summer long on FanDuel. International soccer, Olympics going on now. I got my gymnastic bets rolling, NBA Summer League, Major League Baseball, of course. But, guys, football is freaking back, my friends. And college football is going to be back in a couple of weeks. So you want to check it all out at FanDuel. And by the way, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On ACC your first listen and your first watch today. Alex Donno from Locked On Canes alongside Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. So, Kenton, since, of course, Cam Ward was the ACC preseason player of the year, it would have been surprising if he wasn't the first-team All-ACC quarterback. He was. First-team All-ACC running backs. I have no issue with this. Jaden Ott and Amarian Hampton took those honors. And I know, like, I talked to a lot of Miami fans. Obviously, they were a little upset, some of them, that Damian Martinez didn't get on there. But it's like you're splitting hairs because Ott and Hampton both had awesome seasons last year, and they actually put up bigger yardage than Martinez did. So I think Martinez is going to be very good this year. Amarian Hampton was a monster last year, and Jaden Ott was putting up video game numbers last year at Cal.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about this is it's all about two things. Number one, statistically, they exceeded them, like you said. Both of those guys exceeded what Martinez did. But stylistically, what is your preference? And in today's society, we all know that people prefer the track needle on grass situation to the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. To the we're going to get down, we're going to get physical, we're going to get nasty. That is how we're going to play this game, and that's what we're going to do because that's what Martinez brings. He brings that physicality. He brings that the way I finish runs, which I would say if there was a scale of like the most power to the most finesse of the three, it would definitely be Martinez being the most powerful, Hampton being the blend between the two, Ott being the least physical, which not to say he's not physical, just of these three backs, he's by far the least physical. So, It's all about stylistically what people like. And let's be honest, media people are people. They like to see the home run. They like to see the long ball. They like to see guys pulling away from defenses more than they like to see that guy that's going to get you 5 yards and lean forward and end the game by running out the clock as much as anybody else.
So the 3 starting wide receivers, preseason All ACC, this is exactly the way I voted. I think we got this 1,000% right. We being the media. Casey Concepcion from NC State, Xavier Restrepo from Miami, and Alec Iomanner from Stanford. And like for anybody who didn't like do their due diligence on Stanford because they were out west last year, Iomanner is I'd say he's the best player on that team, and that dude he's filthy. So I think that they got 3 receivers right.
People joke all the time about Stanford guys going on to be accountants, doctors, lawyers, engineers. I don't give a damn what Alec Iomanor goes on to do with his career, with his life. He's going to be good at it. I kid you not. He is so impressive from a cerebral standpoint, from a physical standpoint. That's a big body that knows how to use that big body. You talk about the 3 receivers, Restrepo and KC, they're more so scat guys. They're more so, I'm going to find a way to route you up and get open. Alec Iomanor can separate from you both laterally, vertically. It does not matter. You can be right under him and he'll say, hey, I can jump higher than you. I can reach higher than you. And when I get this ball in my hands, there is no rake through the arms. You'll be okay. No, rake through the arms and you'll end up on my highlight reel.
So starting tight end, I think from a talent standpoint, I think they got this right. It's just since he missed, I think, more than half of the season last year, I did not vote for him, but I don't have a problem with Oronde Gadsden the second getting the nod there from Syracuse. Like, I mean, I guess like depending on whether the criteria is going by what someone did last year or what they're going to do this year. Yeah, I could see OG having a huge year coming up now that he's fully healthy again.
Let me tell you something about Oronde Gadsden. The only knock that anybody could say about him being voted as the first team, well, it's 2. The injury thing, and is he actually a tight end? He is in that Jimmy Graham mode of you're going to move him everywhere because you want to find a mismatch with this. I talk about separating vertically with Alec Iomanor. Oronde Gadsden does that to a Randy Moss-ish level. Not saying that he is Randy. I'm saying that at that jump ball point against college defenders, it looks like that. And trust me, I was a child when Randy was in his prime. So I know what that looks like. He terrorized my Lions for years. And watching Oronde Gadsden, he does the same thing. The ACC defender, hell, SEC, ACC, Big Ten, you put a defender in front of him, 9 times out of 10, Oronde is going to be the longer and higher jumping man.
All right, so let's go through the offensive line. Offensive tackles are Darius Washington from Florida State, Blake Miller from Clemson, the guards, Willie Lampkin from North Carolina, Michael Gonzalez from Louisville, and Maurice Smith from Florida State, the center. I mean, I guess I was, and listen, I'm not going to complain too much because Miami had more preseason all ACC than any other school. I was surprised that from what I think is going to be one of the best offensive lines in the league, Miami didn't have a single selection, but I guess for them, maybe the collective is better than the individuals. But at the same time, it's like, I think all the 5 that were selected here are really good players and deserve to be there.
Yeah, these 5 guys, what a collection of 5. And I'll tell you this much. For the offensive line, it's always hardest to argue because the same way that I talk about stylistic with Martinez, it's even more intensified with the offensive line because what do you prefer? There are offensive linemen in this league that you do not want to see coming downhill on the reach block. But if you get them in a vertical set, you're all right with that. You're all right saying, hey, I can rush the pass against this guy. But if you know, hey, I've got a combo block, him and the guard are going to try to move me out of this B guy, it's going to be a long day for you. So offensive line more than any other, it's really tough to determine. Even though we have PFF grades and all that, even they get it wrong sometimes. And it's really tough to say who are these guys, who are the best here, because they're not as on the outside, and it's harder to get a hold of their film. If you don't have all 22, 9 times out of 10, you're going to struggle to find film on these guys doing what they do at a high level.
Yeah, you're right about the PFF thing, because at the end of the day, it comes down to human beings watching players, watching plays, because I've seen sometimes PFF will put out a tweet where they're like, such and such offensive lineman didn't give up a single sack last year. And then in the comments, someone will post a video of that offensive lineman seemingly giving up a sack. So
exactly.
Like, how do we determine some of this stuff? Yeah, so all right, moving on to the defense. For the defensive line, the two defensive ends, this is the exact way that I voted. Ashton Gelati from Louisville, Reuben Bain Jr. from Miami. The defensive tackles, Joshua Farmer from Florida State, Aeneas Peoples from Virginia Tech. Any argument there? I don't think I have any argument.
I don't either. I mean, the incumbents for the defensive line positions are all gone for the most part in terms of your Jared versus your Dwayne Carters, etc. This is the new generation of guys who are naturally going to slide in and fill in. I will say this. Everybody knows how high I am on Ashton Gelati, but there's a name in this group that could be an X factor that makes his team's season what it needs to be. Aeneas Peoples from Duke at Virginia Tech now. I am telling you right now, if Virginia Tech finds a way to stop the run, it's because Peoples was dominant. Not good, dominant. And it'd be very interesting to see if he can be that guy.
Three linebackers, Kiko Mauinoa from Miami, Marlo Wax from Syracuse, Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech. What do you think about, or sorry, that was, I missed one. Barrett Carter from Clemson. I went down and picked up a cornerback. Barrett Carter from Clemson, Francisco Mauinoa from Miami, Marlo Wax from Syracuse. You like those three?
I love them. I love all three of these guys. It's hard to contain my excitement when talking about Marlo Wax. He feels like he's been in college for like 12 years. You know why?
Yeah.
Because he's been making plays from day one. As soon as Marlo stepped on the field, he asserted himself as a leader, not by word, but by deed. He's shown up. He has been the leader of the mob, as they call it, that defense up at Syracuse. He has been an excellent leader. I love listening to the man's podcast. I'm not going to be ashamed to admit that, okay?
I didn't know he had a podcast. I'll check that out.
They have the Mob podcast. It's a podcast done by their defense and by guys on the team. I'm going to tell you, Marlo is such a phenomenal guy. And the same thing I said about Alec Ayamanor, and whatever he does in life, he'll have success. Marlo is very much in that same way. He is more than a thumper. He is a vocal leader. He is a guy who thinks his way through the game. I love him. I love these other two linebackers as well. But Marlo, you deserve your flowers, brother.
Defensive backs. I know you're going to like this because they got your guy in there. So you have Dorian Strong from Virginia Tech at corner, Aiden White, NC State at corner. He's getting recognized, rightfully so. Jonas Sanker from Virginia and R.J. Mickens from Clemson are the two safeties. You know,
Jonas does not get his love because Sanker is a Virginia guy, and people look at him and say, oh, he plays at UVA. How good can he be? That defense didn't have many bright spots last year. No. I kid you not. In terms of how rough things went for that defense, one of their starters tore both of his patella tendons celebrating a fumble. That is a thing that actually happened last year. That is how snake-bitten this team has been. Sanker is as close as you could get to the remedy for this team. He was fantastic last year. He is a guy that can do a little bit of everything from the safety position. He can come down and thump. He can cover a deep half. He can cover the deep middle and be that kind of that center fielder that you don't want to throw over his zone at all. He's a special talent. And I don't want to say it's unfortunate that he's buried on that roster, but that's kind of what it is. It's unfortunate because many people won't get to see him play and shine in big moments because games have not been close enough for them to have big moments. But I'd love to see Tony Elliott and this team change that.
Well, that is, I'll give you the specialist real quick. I don't want to discount the specialist.
Absolutely.
Kicker Andres Borregales from Miami, punter Alex Mastromano from Florida State. Those guys are both superb at what they do.
Yeah.
And Rashard Smith for kick returner from SMU, former Miami Hurricane, returned a kick to the house last year. He's now a Mustang, and that's a good group of specialists, Kenton. I don't think I would change anything on that list.
I would argue that Boom Kester belongs on that list. I'm joking. Noon Kester is a great punter, but the guys that we do have in this group, they're all special. And I expect all three of these guys to be playing on Sundays. I mean that very genuinely. Yeah. And it's super hard. People don't realize how hard it is for specialists to get into the NFL. Guys who go on and win the Gross and the Guy Award sometimes end up as accountants and sales execs the next year because if you're great at punting, you can do it for 20 years. If you're great at kicking, you can do it for 20 years. But these guys are that special. Borregales and company here, they're that special to where I truly do believe that all of these guys have a role on Sundays.
Well, folks, that'll do it for this awesome week on Locked On ACC. But guess what? Next week, we're a week closer to college football being back. So we'll have a lot of good stuff coming up on Monday. He is Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. I'm Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. Thank you for making us your first listen. Make sure to make Locked On Wolfpack and Locked On Canes your second and third listens. And we'll talk to you Monday on another episode of Locked On ACC, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.